Alright, so welcome to the second installment of the Armchair Ashram here on the Black Sun Rising. If you're sitting here in chat right now, you can't see the absolutely amazing picture that I've gotten from one of the members here on the server. That's a background image. So you will be able to see it though in the YouTube video later on. Right now the YouTube watchers can see it. I'll make sure to include his name so that he gets the full fame somewhere in the YouTube description, because his name actually escapes me right now. He's a pretty good artist, and well, he made this for us. So the Armchair Ashram isn't really a podcast, although well, you're listening to it, so I guess that kind of makes it a podcast. It's pretty much just a way for people here on the server to get together, talk a little bit about something which is important, and well, we broadcast it to YouTube and to people who aren't here, so that they can stay up to date on the topics. I guess that technically makes it a podcast, but really, it's basically just a meeting every now and then in the week, and we record it so that people can hear it afterwards. We can have some pretty high hopes for it though. We're not just here to sit and ramble. Hopefully we can have as I said last time as well, a nice mean between moderated debate, rambling and awkward silence. It'll go probably less than an hour this time. There's not as much people as last time. But who knows, maybe we have a lot of things to say. We'll be talking about 3 topics. First a topic about... and then a topic about... let's see here... history/science. And then a topic on esoterics. And today Aldrich will actually be talking about the esoterics topic a little bit. We were having a discussion here on the server in text just a bit before, and he was inspired to keep the discussion going here on the pseudo podcast as well. So with that, let's get to it. And this first topic regarding health, fitness and mind, I've labeled it here on my notes. Send a nice picture here in chat as well, just to kind of stop people in the right mood. This is a tangent, right? But I'm pretty sure that this picture can be said to represent the hero beating down whatever is bad in nature right now. And sometimes that bad is an external bad, as a literal hydra trying to kill you. But sometimes it's also something internal. So relating this to health and fitness and mind is, I think, appropriate. You think that?
I have a comment on that.
Yeah.
Well, generally, the snake and by extension the dragon, Jung said, represents the lower animal self, like the reptile and mammalian brain, the more ancient brain, right? And like conquering oneself, and the highest self being in control, killing the serpent or the dragon. Because it's a big spine, right? It's a spine which, it represents the spine and the brainstem.
Yeah. And this particular statue is called Hercules and the Hydra as well. So I guess it relates to the story itself as well.
Yeah, I think that's a universal thing in all human, or not human, in all religions. Obviously you have Hercules. We also have the Adam and Eve story with Satan acting as the snake. And I believe there are some Buddhist stories that are connected to snake sort of evilness. So it's universal.
Yeah. There's definitely things that can be said on that as well.
Yeah, it's a perennial archetype, I suppose you could say. It shows up a lot in the East, and I think even in some
I have
some
to
African
say more on that now.
folklore.
You've prodded me well enough, okay? So here's the thing. The ultimate representation of bad, I've heard to be a dragon, because the dragon is both something that flies, right? It has wings, so it could be partially a kind of predatory bird. It also has the jaws of a lion with sharp teeth, And it also has the scale and the general body shape as well of a lion, with a tail, with paws, often with claws like a lion as well on the paws, although more maybe reptilian claws in some cases. So the body shape of a lion with wings, the maw of a lion, and then also scales as a kind of reptile. So there you go. You have three animals. You have a bird, you have a lion, and you have a reptile. Now there's more to it, right? Because there's another thing that dragons always do. Can somebody tell me what that is?
Burn down villages.
Yeah, they breathe fire, right. There you go. There's four things. And those are, I believe, the four major things that have been haunting humankind since the beginning. The most frightening things ever. So big forest fires, birds of prey, I guess predatory mammals like lions and reptiles. And you combine them all into one being, and then that's a dragon. So there's
Well,
that.
sure, but then you also have the Chinese representation of a dragon. And it's basically the same thing, but they attribute dragons to positive aspects.
Yeah, I actually had something to say on that. I was just typing up for notes. While in Eastern mythology, dragons tend to be very good, positive figures associated with, luck and wealth and health and so on. In the East, they tend to be horrible monsters to be conquered, right?
Rather in the West.
Oh, yeah, I misspoke. Yeah, in the West, they exist that way in the mind and in the mythology, and I think it shows a difference in the Western and Eastern worldviews. While in the West, we wish to conquer the lower self and subjugate it and transcend. In the East, it's more, you can see that Eastern philosophy is mostly about almost melting away and becoming one with the lower reality, which connects to the growth of Christianity in the West and the growth of Buddhism in the East. I think each of those spoke to those different worldviews. And I think it's obvious why.
Right, well, there you go. That's amazing. So I definitely picked an interesting picture at the very least.
Yeah.
And also, for Alroni's sake here, the chat is also being recorded. So even if you just write things in here, you will still be heard by the depths of the internet. So certainly keep on writing things. I'm definitely reading them, but I haven't read them out loud yet.
Yeah, by the way, this doesn't... You should post this around if you want to.
Yeah, spread it around to get some publicity.
Listeners. Yeah, don't set it as, a private link.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
if you're comfortable with that, because I am.
Yeah. We can look more into that afterwards. Now, let's get on to the actual point there. It's a pretty simple point this time around. Let me see. Last time we spoke about family, but we're not going to be having a real kind of topic like that this time. Rather, I kind of wanted to keep it a bit cozy and just kind of wanted to share the top 3 things that you think that, I guess, people should know, / concentrate on, / well, you just make a top 3, right? You can use an arbitrary kind of distinction. Doesn't have to be perfect. A top 3 of just a kind of, not really a sentence, but just a topic that you think people should know about or that they should practice. And I'll actually give you all like 30 seconds to think of 3 things and write them down, and then we can share them here in the chat. And the 3 things that you're supposed to, rank the top 3 is somehow supposed to be related to health, fitness, and the mind. Self-improvement. How to make yourself a better person. It could be something as simple as diet. It could be something more advanced, such as reading, right? If that's what's the top 3 for you. But maybe there's something a little bit outside of the box that you think is a top 3 right now.
Hold on, let me go find a pencil.
You can write it down on a notepad on the computer as well, or just keep it in your mind. Yeah, you can say it on voice as well. I'll read it out. Whatever anybody's said out here said in the chat as well. So that if somebody's listening purely on voice, then they can also hear it. So let's have about 10 more seconds of thinking. Top 3 things that you want to share.
And you said it had to relate to mind, body, and what else?
Health, fitness, mind, self-improvement. How to make yourself a better person. Alright, so has Aldrich and Iodine and Yakko also got some
still making a
things?
list.
Yeah, we'll give you time, don't worry. I'll read out what Alroni has written here. And number 1 for Alroni is mental health, such as having relationships in order, getting enough sleep, etc. Mental health is the number 1 thing. And number 2 is physical health via exercise and diet. And number 3, literature and art. And I've written in full caps, meditate, keep it clean, then low carb, high fat. Aldrich has written weightlifting, number 1. Number 2, reading. Number 3, less screen time. Yakko has written develop a craft or a hobby, lift, and experience life outside the confines of books and text. And Iodine doesn't quite have a top 3, he says, but here are the first things that came to mind surrounding this topic. Try to become self-sufficient. Try to, I guess, eat localized food. And military service readyable? Readiable? Not sure I understand that word.
Readyable. Ready. I should change it to ready. But...
What does it mean to be readyable?
Ready for military service, I'd take it.
Yeah. Like, for people, think of like Sparta. Like,
okay,
people to be, yeah.
You should be fit, as if you were to...
Like if you were to fight.
Yeah.
I think obesity is one of the worst plagues we have.
Alright.
Well, I'm ready to explain my points.
Yeah, exactly, right. I'll explain mine last since, well,
okay.
I'm the host. So that means that Aldrich gets to explain his first, since Alrona is only participating via text chat. So go ahead.
Alright, weightlifting and reading, because I think that those 2 activities really hone the 2 things fundamental to manhood, which are, physical capability and mental capability, resourcefulness generally. I think the body is useless without a wise, useful mind directing it, and the mind is useless if you can't project your will onto the world yourself, So those 2 things, obviously, and less screen time, just because of how deeply unhealthy I think it is. How much some of us look at screens. I mean, many of us look at screens almost the whole day, or at least most of the day. I used to, and it's obviously terrible. It's obviously against natural law, you could say, because most of our ancestors never saw a screen.
Yeah.
Almost all of them, actually.
No, yeah, obviously, like practically all of them. Pretty much all of them never saw a screen, so it's a very unnatural, life-denying way to live. And it's just conducive, obviously, to getting out there, getting fit, finding a girl, doing things in real life to advance the cause and that kind of thing.
Oh yeah, of course, right. There's lots of more things.
But I mean, like any technology, it's obviously very useful. They're obviously very useful and nice to have, but we must rule over our technology. Our technology must serve us, and not the other way around. And I think that's the fundamental difference between between traditionalism and transhumanism.
Yeah, like how far is too far?
Yeah.
Ultimately, I don't think that we can control technology as much as it can control us.
What did he mean by this?
Do you want to elaborate on that? Why do you think that?
Like how Kaczynski says, become slaves to new technology. As in, take the car. You know, it was great when it started out, but now you need a car. The iPhone, it was great when it came out, or the smartphone, I should say, but now you need one to live life normally.
I think it's also just the way that technology is used by certain groups. I think the technology that immediately comes to people's minds, or at least here, is television. Just how dangerous it is. I haven't watched television in months, and just looking at it after that period of like months and just doing natural things is just, it makes you realize just how like artificial and immoral a lot of it is. Just how fake it is too.
Yeah, this really gets at the archetype of like the nerdy, geeky bug man, right? Like the pathetic, skinny guy who lets technology use him and is super wrapped up in video games and computers and shit, you know?
Yeah.
I can read Alroni's explanation out aloud as well, since he decided to explain more in detail via text. So, here it goes. Living normally is basically impossible without enough sleep. This is coming from someone who has spent years being sleep deprived for weeks at a time, and it destroys your ability to think and interact naturally. Diet is obvious. You'll have more energy and feel better if you're eating the right things for a rigorous lifestyle. Hobbies are a way to occupy our need to create and seek higher forms of aesthetics. It lets us manifest things which don't exist outside our sense for creativity.
If I can jump in here, I agree about the hobbies, but I don't think it just has to be art or literature.
And after that, let's see here. Yeah. So, Jaco, do you want to say something more about developing a craft / a hobby, left and then experience life outside the confines of books / text?
Yeah, like Alronia says, it just gives you something to do and something productive to do. For example, I'd like to get into blacksmithing or woodworking. It gives me a sense of accomplishment to make something with my bare hands.
Yeah, yeah.
Lifting is just obvious, physical.
Yeah, exactly.
And this is coming from a person. I still read. I used to read a lot more than I did, but I always had my face in a book, and I learned a lot from it. But ultimately, I just didn't experience enough life from reading so much.
Interesting.
The golden rule. Always in moderation.
All right.
Yeah, exactly.
Who philosophized the golden rule?
And I'm pretty sure it wasn't invented by a person, right? Even though somebody might have written it down first.
Yeah, no, someone did write
Oh,
it first.
Yeah,
Aristotle,
yeah,
actually,
Aristotle.
the golden mean,
Yeah, but
he
he
called
didn't
it.
invent it, right?
Well,
Yeah.
probably not,
Yeah, exactly.
but he was the one who coined it. Till we know first put it to paper.
Sure. So iodine, can you, well, if you want to, you can expand on the points you've written down as well.
Oh, sure, I guess. So when I say self-sufficiency, obviously, I mean not depending on any sort of government or system to give you just even basic needs. That means water, food, luxuries, and all, and that can tie to the of lemmings. But I mean, what I'm saying here is obviously you don't need to go out every day to your river and boil water. I'm not saying that, but it's definitely a skill that people need to learn. But just try and be separate from the system. It's not feasible, I don't think, right now, and it's just not capable for a lot of people. But yeah, all right. Localized food. It's been said by a few friends of mine that basically one of the most nationalized things you can do is eat locally. Uh, by getting your food from supermarkets or from restaurants, you're basically just contributing to foreign economies. Uh, dare I say, Jews, just that sort of thing. When I talk about military service, ready, I think it's important for citizens to just be as fit as possible and to always be ready for conflict and ready for revolts and all. Think of like Sparta, Greek city-states, just that kind of concept.
All right, and me at last, I wrote down that the top 3 things that I think you should do is meditate, keep it clean, and then low carb, high fat. And there should be a kind of like a side note to that, which is these are all advices, probably from all of us as well, would apply, are kind of situational. And I would say that my advice applies particularly well in the situation to people starting from zero. If you're in a pretty bad situation, physically, mentally, right, from all of these different kinds of things, maybe you don't have any kind of workout routine, maybe you don't have any friends, maybe you don't have a job. Lots of these different things, right? And there's a lot of things that are going wrong. Then I think the things you can really start by doing make major changes in your life, especially mentally, but eventually also physically, is to meditate, for one. And you can find tons and tons of guides how to meditate. If you want to just have something to push into YouTube and then listen, then I would look for lectures by a person known as Alan Watts on YouTube. And you'll be able to learn how to meditate. It's not a difficult thing. And it allows us to experience reality differently than we usually do. And it is healing, to say the least. It's if you want to put it into maybe computer terms, it's like doing a reboot of the computer every now and then. Crude way of putting it, but the computer feels better after a reboot, and so do you. And then keeping it clean, it's a vague point, and it's meant to be a vague point because you should keep it all clean. You should keep your speech clean. You should keep your room clean. You should keep your body clean. You should keep your relationship clean. You should keep your history clean. Your car, your record. Well, keep it clean, right? Whatever you can imagine, if it's dirty, well, you should clean it. Keep it clean. If you're in a very bad situation, you're starting from zero. Doesn't matter where you start. Pick up something, put it where it's supposed to be. That goes mentally and it goes physically. And then lastly, low carb, high fat. Change your diet. I recommend low carb, high fat to anybody of the Northern European descent. It works for me, works incredibly well for me, and I've only heard good things about it. You can, well, if you're listening to this, you're probably smart enough to find more information on it, but you can also just ask me. Also, Angriff, he's pretty much the guru. He's the one who taught me about it. He knows pretty much everything there is to know.
Yeah, low carb, high fat, high protein. I mean, I've not gone keto, but since I've made a point of eating much more protein and fat, I swear I'm even mentally sharper.
Mm. All right. No, I think that was a pretty comfortable
also
kind of point.
About on diet. Sorry.
Yeah.
I got the thought in the last moment. The important thing also is supplements, or not even supplements, just your nutrients. Fish oil is very important. Iodine, yeah, because is also very important. I recommend changing out your sea salt to iodized salt. Just various other things. Like if you live in a snowy climate and you're not able to get out as much, but if you're trying to make changes, but in the meantime, you can take, vitamin D, you can just whatever, really.
Yeah.
But I think a universal supplement
It's
would be...
great that you said that, actually, because I had written down a point to remind myself to actually say low carb, high fat plus supplements, but I forgot to say it. So it's good that you did. And these are the supplements which I'm currently taking. It's a general multivitamin, vitamin D, magnesium, and omega-3. So I take a tablet each day, and then I eat normally. Now, I eat normally, right, quote-unquote. The low-carb, high-fat diet, it's a pretty kind of, you could call sloppy low-carb, high-fat diet. It keeps the carbs really low, and it keeps the fats high, but it's not very varied, and it's not very healthy, to put it that way. So that's why I definitely need the multivitamin. Otherwise, I'd be going... Well, I'd be going out of all the different minerals.
Can you hear me, Phil?
Yeah, we can hear you.
All right. Yeah, and water. Obviously, water is very important. If you don't make a point of drinking enough, you might be chronically dehydrated and not even realize it until you start drinking more to notice the difference. So I'd say 12 cups of water a day. Try 12 cups.
Yeah, isn't it like there's a liter that you're supposed to reach? Is it 5 liters a day? I don't remember.
Yeah, it's 3 liters.
3 liters only?
That's what I've heard.
Oh yeah, it might be 3 liters, yeah. And I have 50 centiliters bottles at the work, so that's 6 of those bottles a day. I'm pretty sure
trying to be
yeah.
Try to be more conscious of it and just have a sip whenever you feel the slightest bit dehydrated.
Yeah. Oh yeah, also right, if you pee and toilet is like completely yellow, like with a very strong and like dark yellow hue, then you need to drink more. It's supposed to be very clear. So
yeah, for anyone who has like an office job or just any job that confines them to a space where you just sit, take water bottles and just refill them. That's what I do. Also, you can lose a just in a lot of fat, actually. And a lot of people don't realize it. Just by jogging, like even for just a few days, you will immediately notice the differences. So if you're in like an office job, just jog back to your house or bicycle. I mean, it's pretty incredible, actually.
Yeah. I guess we can also just kind of make a general kind of header towards /fit on 8chan. Kind of alright, especially if you're just kind of looking for the basics. Now, image port's always to generate, but there's probably some good copy pastas still around.
But you can be a man above time, right? And look past all of that for the elements that you can use.
Exactly. Now, right, on retrospect, I think that was a pretty cool way of having a point. It wasn't really a kind of topic, it was more a kind of just activity. And we might have more of that in the future. Not necessarily a game, but some other kind of group activity that encourages discussion. And the next point, before we move on to the esoterics, will be history related. And this is a question which I really have been trying to study myself, to not much avail. I shouldn't say that I've tried to study it. I've been interested in looking for things to study, but I haven't been exactly like scouring the internet, because if I really wanted to, I could probably find. Which is why I'm asking, right? This is part of my searching. So what I'm wondering really is, what are the essentials to know about the National Socialist/Fascist history since 1945 up until now? Now, obviously, it's pretty hard to discuss history, say, in the last 10 years. What was an historical event and what wasn't? But we really should be able to talk about, well, what was an historical event, say, 70 years ago, which we're pretty much approaching now. And, well, I mean, if we can just kind of work through together, that's fine, Ira. Don't worry.
Yeah, that's fine. I have something to say.
Yeah, if we could just kind of work through together since 1945 up until, well, now, I guess, and see how much we can share, and, well, what was historical events from the National Socialist/Fascist worldview.
Yeah, I'd say the most important thing to learn and incorporate into our strategy from the last 70 years is the pivot from, I guess I'd say, a conservative strategy and worldview to a radical revolutionary one, I think. And I can only speak to America on this, I guess, but I think George Lincoln Rockwell was the last chance for anything vaguely conservative to pull America back together. Because, you know, you can see how he appealed to the American founding fathers and to the historical precedent.
Right, and just for the sake of being meticulous, what is the exact time scale we're talking about with Rockwell here? The exact years. I don't have them in the head right now.
Oh, well, he was operational throughout the 60s. And he was killed 1970, I think.
All right, thanks.
But, yeah, I mean, the 60s really were the turning point, where I think, and William Luther Pierce talked about this, and James Mason, to his credit, talked about this, how George Lincoln Rockwell was the last chance for any sort of conservative message. It was killed, essentially. We've been in a radical revolutionary mode.
Yeah, right.
Because we're just under total occupation. Anything like him has been totally clamped down on. So we can't really credibly talk about preserving America because nothing is left, right? Yeah. Like, it's going to have to come down to balkanization.
And an interesting thing, I think, that I was thinking about this before the show, was that I can only start thinking about the kind of events that happened in America with Rockwell, with Pierce, with Mason, with the ANP, and the small things that I know about what's happened over there. But I've got no clue at all about the history in Europe. Was there even a history in Europe? And is it relevant? Right? I'm pretty sure we can say there was a history in Europe. Obviously, there's always been people, well, fighting. But, well, what happened? And why haven't we heard more about them?
Yeah, I guess that's interesting. I suppose it was more at the forefront in America because the racial question is baked into our founding, and it's always been here, with the question of African American.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
And also, you see today how even today, with the huge racial problem in Europe now, identitarians, so-called identitarians in Germany, I've seen videos of them talking about how it's not really about race, it's like an ethno-cultural identity, and they like to stay real vague about what it means to be German, and I think that's probably tactical, but, I obviously think it's a bad tactic. The thing is, in America, it's always had to be explicitly racial, whereas that's something more new to Europe, I think.
Okay, so I'm going to attempt to make a pretty big brush stroke across history here. And I'm not putting any kind of real weight behind it, it's just an attempt. So we had Rockwell. He was a very considerable political movement in the US, which was obviously halted. And after that, pretty much the entire National Socialist/Fascist front, it fell into resistance. It was no longer a movement that was, you could say, public, but not necessarily. It was a movement completely outside the system, at the very least, like that. It was no longer part of the system at all. You couldn't work from inside the system anymore. And what happened was that people correctly identified this and began instead networking, I guess, more through information between each other. They worked more with trying to create good sources of literature, good sources for understanding the different kinds of parts of the worldview, such as writing about the Jews, sending out broadcasts with William Luther Pierce, creating a bunch of information which would lay the groundwork for future generations, right? So there was a period after Rockwell. They created a ideological, maybe, framework, an ideological groundwork. And you could probably say that that ideological framework didn't catch on until image boards hit the internet. Because you had Stormfront and you had the forums. But and also, right, it didn't really catch on until the image boards became a little bit normie infested, as far as I can tell. Because before that, it was different. Because you certainly had the skinheads across Europe and across that, but they were more of just a counterculture with a racial identity. They weren't exactly an ideological movement. Right? Now the groundwork was laid, and people found the groundwork, and very recently, say 2014, 2013, it started really breaking through again, for various reasons.
Yeah, that's very interesting, because I've heard it said that really the defining element of the, whatever you want to call this current wave of white identity, the alt-right, the pro-white movement, whatever, is, I think the defining characteristic, I agree, the defining characteristic is that it takes, the positions of the status quo ante in some areas. It is conservative in that sense. It's conservative revolutionary in that sense, and that it wants to go back to traditional gender roles. It wants to go back to ethnic homogeneity, but it uses insurgent tactics similar to those the left used in the 1960s when they actually were a counterculture and they actually were changing things. So I think the defining thing about this current movement, this current wave of white identity, is that we are using these insurgents, truly countercultural tactics. And I think that's what makes us stand apart from the rest, and I think that's why we'll win.
Hmm. I think,
Like, for example, sorry, go on.
I think it'd be interesting to find out more about the history, especially in Europe, for the National Socialist fascist scene. All the different things that have happened. Because I know, for example, that the Nordic resistance movement was founded, I believe, before year 2000. So it's actually a pretty old organization, viewed as that. But it hasn't really been public until recently. It was public since always, but it hasn't really been open and outwards facing until recently. There's probably a lot to know about this part of history, but interestingly, there's probably not a single book written about it, because it's so recent, and we're living in it.
That's a project. That's a project someone should do. That's a good point. Cataloging from a historian's point of view, this current movement for posterity.
Sure, yeah.
But like, as an example of these insurgent tactics I was talking about, just never purging your radicals. Like, even if you think someone's being quote unquote LARPy or edgy or going too far in their rhetoric, you just don't comment on it. You don't punch them. You don't try to purge them. You don't signal against them to try to win good boy points with leftists.
Exactly.
It's so easy to just say nothing. I guess you could say another element of that is just our rhetorical tone, which is, irreverent, shocking, transgressive, which is very new for, I guess you could say, right-wing movements. But it's because we are truly the countercultural movements now. We are the ones totally opposed to the status quo. And this is why, when conservatives say, oh, you're like right-wing SJWs,
Yeah, exactly.
Or you're like racist SJWs, there's a grain of truth to that.
Yeah.
And that's why we've made so much progress.
Yeah, you know what? I can tell as well, speaking to my brother and his sister and their friends, that these people, having grown up in a kind of internet culture, they've posted a couple of pepes here and there. We have an incredibly good grip on the youth for the future. Like, it's absolutely crazy. We're basically their dream of whatever it would mean to have a political representative ever. Because we've grown up exactly in their scenarios, and then we've started expressing political opinions. So when they go looking for somebody to represent them, they immediately know who to go to, and we know how to express it. We just need to post some memes.
Yeah,
it's basically that simple.
You go to a conservative conference these days, whatever conservative means now, but you go to a conservative conference, and they're all, like, on death's doorstep. They're all... they're such throwbacks. They're so anachronistic. It's all their rhetoric is dumb and gay and fundamentally unexciting, uninspiring. Whereas, yeah, we're attracting youth in record numbers.
Yeah.
Because, yeah, I mean, they're the past and we're the future. Identity is the future. There's nothing more powerful in the world.
So I think, yeah, to the people listening, if you have somebody who is younger than you and who you know actually has a little bit of respect to you, show them that you are part of their culture, which is the youth culture of the 2017, right? And then show them that you have political opinions which aren't just, call them edgy or funny. You're actually having real opinions. That will, well, change the world, because they've probably not even seen that before. All they've seen is some kind of weird politician on TV. They've never actually seen real political opinion expressed. So try it out.
Yeah, and I think that's a good positive note to end on if we have nothing else. No other point.
Yeah, I mean, the next point would be to talk about the esoterics, but that nobody else here now.
Yeah, we can save the topic for next week.
Yeah. Fair enough. So we'll keep this episode short in that case. We've only spoken about 2 topics so far.
Yeah, but I feel I feel it's been very productive and interesting nonetheless.
Yeah.
A lot of good stuff packed into that short length.
It's certainly not a loss in any way. We did it and now it's out. Great.
Yep.
We'll have another one of these in about 2 weeks. It'll be either Friday to Saturday night or Saturday to Sunday night. And hopefully we'll have some more people. Maybe we need to recruit more people to find them. Maybe.
Yeah, which is one of the reasons why I said we should spread this around. You know, attract interest for newcomers.
Alright, but with that, we'll see everybody the next time. Hail victory!
Hail victory!